Shut up and sit down.
Welcome to the Bricks King podcast, where I'm going to bend your ear about Lego, review those amazing bricks of plastic, and discuss what is new and up and coming around the Lego world. I'm your minifig host, Matt. Let's bout on it. Welcome in, everybody. How are we doing today? Episode 224. Just pushing forward. We're just the grind to 250. It's like it's a solid mark. Not even 225, like 250. It's like you're a quarter of the way there to whatever. So that's what we're pushing to. Anyway, today I teased it a week ago when the information came out about this new set that is releasing March 1st. And the set I'm referring to is the Real Madrid Stadium. I'm going to try and say the name one more time without butchering it. But that is what we're talking about today. I hope you did enjoy the last episode with Tom Jurassic, previewing all the new Jurassic World stuff that is coming, and in great detail. Always good stuff. So once those sets do release and Tom has some free time, we will bring all of that to you in all of its lovely plastic glory. But today we switch to football, or if you're in the US, soccer, which soccer just sounds a lot crappier. So I guess we'll talk about football. Or American football is not this today. So if that's what you're wondering, that is not it. So the Real Madrid Santiago Bernabéu Stadium. That's how I'm going to say it. If it is incorrect, I would love somebody to send me a snippet of this is exactly how you say it. But again, if you recall, if you have not listened to what the details involved with this, go ahead and go back to the breaking news episode. It outlines all of that kind of stuff that is in the press release. I'm not going to go over it again today. But this thing is retailed at $350 USD, of course, and 350 euros. It has 5,876 pieces. And I will tell you this took me a solid 15 hours of building. And like my fingers were raw after the first day, because there's 40 bags. And I told myself, okay, I need to get this done in 3 days. And, it sat on my desk for a few days, but I needed to get it done. I was under a time crunch, and my fingers were just absolutely raw. And as you would expect, it's 6,000 pieces, and it's not like you're building a bag a day or 2 bags a day or something like that. And I thought about that. I was like, you know what? If you did like 2 bags a day or even a bag a day, that gets you like a whole month of enjoyment at minimum. And I was thinking, I'm always having to push out content and stuff like that, which I absolutely love doing. But I thought, it would be really nice to take a big set like that and just do like a bag a day or 2 bags a day and, kind of have it be like the advent calendars that you do in December. I thought that would be really neat, but that's just my opinion. So I'm going to try and break this down as best I can. There are some really fun techniques to be able to achieve some of the shapes. And there's also, I really like, even though this is not my favorite type of set to build, because it's just display. I can't play with it. I can't pick it up and, I don't have stud shooters or tile shooters or anything like that. It goes on a shelf or it goes on a table or, somewhere for display. You want to put it in your office. But there are some really cool things with this. And in my opinion, this is the best looking stadium that they've done so far. And this is only the 3rd one. But I think, in my opinion, this is the best one so far. So let's go ahead and deep dive into this puppy. So if you were a good little boy or a girl, because, Santa's going to be here in like another 9 months. That seems like a long way away, but it'll be here before you know it. But if you were a good little boy or girl, you would have already found out, the dimensions on this thing, and it is absolutely massive. So I kind of want to start with the absolute completion of this thing and then break it down into smaller pieces and dissect it. So if you've ever built a model of this size, and this is a model, I consider this a model and not like a set. Okay. This is a scaled model that gives you the appearance, that gives you the idea of this specific football team. On the outside, there's a lot of texture that is going on, and just like Lego has done with the other two stadiums as well, what you do get is you do get the team's articulated lorry, which is an 18-wheeler here in the United States, if you're unfamiliar with what that means. But you do get their truck that has all of their equipment and stuff like that in the front, and they have like lampposts and trees scattered around the outside of the build. They use like the old school type ice cream pieces that have like the three little ball type pieces and then one on top. They use those. I'm trying to think what they use them for now, like soap suds or something like that. And those are just on a pole. But they use upside down hockey sticks for the lights, which I thought was, that's nice. That's nice to be able to do that kind of thing. There are a ton of stickers for this set. I can't tell you the number of stickers that are on here because it was literally on 2 gigantic sheets, and it just blew my mind away with how many there were. But what you get is on the one end of the build, which is supposed to be, I'm assuming this is the main entrance because this is where it has the placard that is here for the stadium. It is on an actually pretty long tile, and this is one of the few printed pieces that you do get here. So that is nice to get. But you have what appears to be like almost like a slashing claw symbol. I think of like when Wolverine makes a mark in metal or something like that. You have that above there, but you have also 2 stickers adjacent to that, which say 1902 and 2002. Obviously, that is to commemorate the 100-year anniversary of the stadium, which obviously we are well beyond that at this point. We are now at 120 years. It's a long time. Well, maybe not the stadium so much as the club. But just below that, you also have another printed tile here that says Real Madrid CF. And I'm assuming that is part of their logo. I don't quite know enough about them because I watch English Premier League. I don't really watch Spanish football at all, soccer, if you will. So I don't know enough about that. But what you get is a fairly simple build on the outside. I say simple looking for the most part. Milan Madge, who was the designer, did a fantastical job here. I really like the way everything kind of turned out. It, like I said, it looks like a modern NFL stadium here in the United States, even though it's not. And this stadium actually is up for, being renovated, and they're actually, I don't know whether it's going to happen or not, but have an enclosed stadium, a retractable roof, which I think would really be neat. But on this side, you have 2 entrances. If you've ever been to a very large stadium, they kind of have these like spiral-ish entrances or exits, and that's what you have here on each corner. They're really nicely built. Some techniques are very simple, studs on the side type thing. And then you have some slopes to be able to close everything up. You have some other tiled pieces, some bow pieces here as well. And then you just kind of get an idea of what this stadium looks like. Along the rooftop, not the center section of the stadium, but along the exterior of the roof section, on the top section, you have this light bluish gray that goes the whole way around. And every 2 studs, you have these bowed pieces that they use. There's some nice tiling that goes on in between, but it really captures that texture. And I actually went and looked at some source material of this, and I was like, Milan did a great job with this. Like, I honestly don't know how else you could accomplish something like that and it's also not squared off. It's rounded on the edges. And this one is much more rounded than the other 2 stadiums that were done in previous years. So I'm really impressed with the way this came together and how it all kind of looks and just how it works with everything else. So down below that, what you have is a lot of tan. There's a lot of tan because that's the color. And then you also have a lot of the translucent blue color here, the clear that goes the whole way. I guess it wouldn't be clear, it'd be the light blue or whatever, but it goes the whole way around. Those are the windows and stuff like that. Also, when you get into like box seats and things like that on the upper levels and things, and all the premiere stuff as far as people paying oodles of dollars or euro or whatever they're using. So you have that. But what I found really interesting is that Lego used these 2x4, what are the height of, I think it's the height of one brick, but they're bowed. They're completely bowed along the top. And they use those here in between segments to give that texture, to give that look, but from the stadium. I don't really know what those are. I think it's just exterior decoration or whatnot, but it really works well. So obviously what you can tell so far is that the entire stadium is pretty much a standard build on the exterior and on the interior. It's very similar. You know, you build it in 4 different sections, and then you have the field or the pitch as something different. And then you have your roof section that is removable as one whole piece. Not an enclosed roof, but a kind of an outlining of a roof. The trim along the top is able to be removed. So what I found fascinating was the ingot pieces here that are used in white that are all along the bottom. And then you have those bricks, the 1x2 bricks that Lego uses that have the dual textures. So you have one that goes horizontal and then one that goes vertical. And they use the vertical the whole way around. It actually really makes it feel taller than what it honestly should be, but it really does a good job of accomplishing that. You do have a print in here of, I don't know if this is supposed to be like a windowed elevator or whatnot, but you do have a tile piece that is printed here that just has black squares on it. I'm assuming that is maybe what that is supposed to be. But one of my most favorite details on the exterior has to be they use 1x5s out of the backside. Just a ton of one sides. In fact, I want to say it's more than 32. I can't remember. In the instructions, it tells you exactly how many 1x5 plates that they use. And it is the most of any current set at this point in time. So again, now Milan has something else to be like, you know what? I was part of this and I did. That's a thing for Lego designers. They may tell you it's not, but it's always a thing to one up each other. Well, I use this part more frequently, or I did this. This was the most number of pieces. And I've talked about that before. So with that in mind, what happens is you use those 1x5 pieces to connect from the top section of the roof towards the middle section. So I guess if you were going to label it anything as far as tiers, it would be like the middle of the top tier if you were inside of the stadium. And then just down below that, they use a slope piece that connects to another 1x5 down below. But the 1x5s aren't naked and they don't have tiles on it. They have a 1x4 brick, just like the 2x4s that I talked about that are completely bowed across the top, that are rounded. They are half circle across the top, or I guess half sphere, I guess, depending on how you want to look at it. That is exactly how these are done as well, which is great because it adds texture. But what I love even better is from when you come down from the top and then you hit that slope, the slope is bringing it in. It's bringing it inward towards the center section of the stadium, or, you know, more of the center section of the stadium. So you get that indent right there, and it really, really looks super special, honestly. It's really sharp looking. So I'm going to flip this thing around to the back, and on the rear end, they use, oh my dear God, the 1x2 grill pieces, and then the 1x2 grill pieces that have an angle to them, that are slightly sloped. I believe they're 2 plates high, and then it goes obviously down to the 1. The entire back side of this is just covered with the sloped ones, and you do it in a few different sections. You do like the bottom section, and then the next section. It's really sharp in the way that it's done. But then they also use the 1x2s, like I had said, the ones that are flat, the grill pieces. They use those on the side for the giant, I guess, stanchions, if you could call them anything. They use those here, and it looks immaculate. I was so impressed by this part of the build, and it was one of the things, like, I knew what I was doing, and it gets repetitive because you're like, oh my God, I got to put more of these things on here. But what it ends up accomplishing in the end is such a beautiful piece of artwork. It's just magnificent because it is essentially a type of art, if you will. So I really like the way that is done. But they also use some bowed pieces up here along the top to be able to get some nice curvature. They use pieces that they usually like to use. So if you were going to build a set, I want to think of more like a Lego City or stuff that's more like dock type stuff. These metal stanchions that are kind of going up and stuff. You know, you've seen it with like antennas hanging off of it on a police station or lights hanging off on it on a certain set. What they do here is those are put horizontally. It's a horizontal build. And then it is attached to studs in a normal standard with the studs sticking up from bottom. And it's just beautifully done. Now, this section is slightly lower than the actual other three-sided top of the stadium. It's really well done. Or the removable roof of the stadium, not the stadium itself. But I love the way this entire thing is done on this end. It is probably one of my favorite eye pieces of this set, and I'm really impressed with just how it was accomplished, even though it looks so simplistic. It most definitely is not. There's a fun little building technique that we're going to get into here in a moment that allows you to get the curved edges on each corner, which was phenomenal. I've never seen anything done like this, and it was really, really cool. So I'm going to lift off the top here. You do get two prints here. You get two giant, massive tiles that are printed here. And it says Real Madrid in the blue against the white, which is really nice. But what you also get along the top here is you get two like scoreboard, I guess, type things, or promotional. Maybe promotional is not the right word, but you get some Nexo Night shields that you put some stickers on. One that has an Adidas sticker and the other Emirates Fly Better. And then in between you have a 2x3 tile that has GO, where it's spelled GOOOOL. And you get that is on both sides, by the way. They're adjacent to each other. But what I really liked was on the other end, what you have here is you have some big old 4x4 tiles that have the studs that are on top just on the one side. So you have 4 studs that are chilling out. And just beyond that, you get a bunch of these glass pieces which allow you to, obviously make it look like the stadium. But I really like the way that was done. And those are all tiled on the end to be able to put them together because the pieces are what? They are 1x2 by 2 bricks high, I think. So you have that, which is really nice. This entire assembly you would think might be super delicate. It is not. The only delicate parts are on the edge where they use some slopes and some tiles, some cheese wedges. Those are the only parts that when you remove this, you have to be careful not to touch because those do pop off very easily. So now that the quote unquote roof is off, let's take a deep dive down inside of the stadium into the segmented seating that is in here. Now, what is kind of neat is they do accomplish the seating in a very, I'm going to say traditional way, where you're building from side to side. So what ends up happening is you are building different sections of the stadium seating upright. So you're building studs, bricks, plates on top, and then what you're doing is you are connecting those pieces via a 1x3 plate that is flat on the bottom and has the hole in the middle. And on the opposite side where you have the studs, those stud holes are open. And what Milan did is he took that 2-barred piece. What I mean by 2-barred is it has 2 tiny little bars, and then in the center it has this little tiny ring, and they do it in the white, and we've seen it before, and it allows you to connect those 2 plates together and put an entire assembly together. I mean, that's really what you are doing. It allows you to be able to connect those pieces together, especially in the corner sections where you don't have a whole lot of room. You build one side and then you build the other side, and then one side is right side up and the other is upside down or studs upside down, whatever you want to call it, because those bar pieces are connecting to those 1x3 plates in there. So that is a beautiful way of doing that. Now, I will say this. I am a fan of certain color packages. And what has happened here is probably why I was more drawn to this set maybe than some of the others, not only just because the build and the texturing on the outside, but you have orange, white, and blue. And the orange and blue look exquisite together. It is some of my favorite colors that go together. It's beautifully done here. And again, we're talking about plates. We're also talking about the ribbed or ridged type 1x2 bricks. This time they are in the blue. So you have the blue butting up against the orange the whole way around. And then in between those segments, so if you are looking at this, you have, let's say, 2 1x2 bricks and then an orange segment, which is a plate. Just below that, in the middle of each section, you're getting the white or orange pieces that are a 1x1 brick, but it's kind of tiled / sloped on the outside. So it's got that triangle is not the right. Yes, it has a triangle if you're looking at it from the side. And it's beautifully done here because it makes it look like a few different things. It makes it look like boxes, even though these really aren't boxes because they're opaque. But it's getting that texture across. It's the exits where you're walking out in between sections. It's all of that kind of thing. And or you can also see it in some stadiums where they have kind of decks that stick out that you can sit on as well. I really like the way that is done. One of my favorite parts of this build was just how those segments kind of went together in general. Now, on the reverse side, what you're not going to see, but you will experience during the build, is they do use studs on the side building technique with those studs on the side pieces, right? The ones that attach normally to stud, but then they have the piece that sticks up to allow you to have studs on the side. You add a few plates in there and boom, shakalaka, you're in business, all right? And what that does is that clutches everything together in that segment, in that section, so that you can attach each of these seating segments into the stadium build itself. All right, before we move any further into this cool model of this giant soccer stadium, football stadium, whatever you want to call it, I got to take a quick break. We'll be back in a moment. Now, how it is attached on the backside, it uses some bars and some clips. Simply done. Very simple in the way that is accomplished, but getting the angles, especially in the corners, is very paramount to achieving this build in a way that, really looks sharp. Now, what I did notice is there are some sections you kind of have to use some force and kind of push back together after everything is clipped in. Some of these segments are extremely difficult to clip in, although it is a fun, it's not one of those things like you're throwing your hat like, I quit! I'm done. The hell with this thing. No, it's not like that. Okay. I've been there. There are sets where I'm like, I'm throwing in a hat. I'm done. I quit. I don't want to do this anymore. This is no longer fun. This is a pain in my booty. So that is along the top section. The entire way around the top section, you have a bunch of stickers. They say Real Madrid. Some of them are in white. Some of them in blue. So the ones in white have blue lettering and the ones in blue have white lettering. Imagine that. So you have those along the top tier, the second tier, and then the field level tier does not. Those are different stickers, which we'll get to here in a moment. But one of the things that I wanted to talk on here is in the corners to be able to get the ability to be able to clip on these sections. They use large panel pieces that are attached horizontally, not vertically. We usually see these for like walls and city sets and stuff like that, space fillers, so you don't have way more pieces than you need, causing the price to go up. Well, what they did here, or what Milana and his team did, is they have them coming out horizontally, sticking outward in towards the stadium. And then when you clip on the sections, that just below that is where you clip on your tiles for all of your stickers that say Real Madrid and so on and so forth the whole way around the stadium, which is beautiful in the way that it was done. So down on the second tier, instead of some of the orange, the triangular type pieces that they're using here, the 1x1s, they're using clear. These are supposed to be like press boxes or expensive boxes for people that have oodles of cash, which it must be nice to be able to go to like a major soccer stadium and be able to, afford that kind of stuff, which again, I think I've commented on this before. My ADHD, a mix of the both, is just so severe that going to live sporting events, I'm like, squirrel, squirrel the entire time. I'm not paying attention to what's going on, so I don't have as much fun as some people would. Anyway, so with that in mind, I'm going to rotate this little puppy around. Now, on the second tier, what you have at the bottom of the sections here is you do have the scoreboard. It says Real Madrid, and I'm going to try and say this, and this is probably going to be wrong, but Visitante. Real Madrid is winning 3-0. I'm assuming that is probably a rival who they are getting their booty kicked probably yet again because Real Madrid is amazing. They are one of, I think in the book it said it, was the only team or one of the only teams that has never been relegated in Spanish football leagues. They've always been in the top tier. They've never dropped out of the top tier, which is absolutely mind-boggling if you think about that. 1902? Like, get out. What others? I know there are other sports franchises. I get that. But what other sports franchises are there? Like, there's not very many that can claim that. So as we move down into the lower bowl, you do have the tunnel here. The tunnel is built, and also where I guess you could say the players are coming in and out, right? They're entering the pitch or the field, depending what you want to call it. And you have that. They use some translucent dark blue pieces here, which is actually really nice. And then that enters you into the pitch. The pitch uses three very large printed tiles to get that checkerboard colored pattern on the green, which is really nice. Again, the printed gold type pieces, which is a 1x2 brick type piece, but it's modified so that it is in clear. And also it has a little opening. So when you attach it from the bottom, it clips into place. If I'm not mistaken, it's with one of the clicky joints. So it doesn't move at all. There's no flex in it. But you have that as well, and that works fantastical. Part of me was like, so I'm going to back up here for a moment, okay? So when I was a kid, and I'm pretty sure I've never shared this story with y'all. When I was a kid, and I would say even up to the age of like 14, I know, because I'm still 8 on the inside. But when I was a kid, I used to take my Lego dudes, my minifigs, and we had underneath the carpet that got ripped out in our house. I don't even know how long it was. It was this ugly, like olive green, because that's what they did in the 80s. But once my parents ripped that out, what we did is we had this like kind of, I think they were like 4x4 or maybe 5x5 type squares that had patterns, and 4 squares together made one larger pattern, right? It's kind of that very ugly design. Anyway, so what I would do, it drove my parents absolutely nuts. So the way my house was, it was, I guess a split level is what it's called. So you walk in the front door, there's stairs that go up and there's stairs that go down to the basement. So when you go up, it goes to the main living area. So at the top of the stairs, when you would go up, there was a landing that was, I don't know, what's a typical width of stairs? 4 feet, 5 feet? I don't know, 4.5 feet, something like that. And it was that width, and it was about half of that, not length, the width of that. So let's say it was like 4x2, and it had that pattern on there of this horrible, I guess it was linoleum at the time, had that horrible stuff on there. And what I ended up doing was that was my football field. And I would create games using 5 versus 5 or 6 versus 6 with my minifigs. And it would be guys that I would have, because again, I didn't have a whole lot of money, so it's not like I can make a whole football team. But anyway, so I would do that. And I would set up football games because I was madly in love with football. And I would I'd write it down in my journal, not my journal, the little notebook I had. This team won by this much. And, it was just so much fun. And the imagination of a child is something that is impossible to recreate in adulthood. It's just impossible. So the reason I hit that tangent was I would have died to be able to have like these printed tiles of the field in here, but for American football, I would have died to have that size. And, I wasn't the most crafty kid. I probably could have created something or whatever, but I was content right there. And the reason I said my parents hated it, you're trying to walk up and down the stairs, and here's Matt with all his Lego minifigs that are here, and they're kicking them and stuff like that. And can you please move? My mom's trying to bring in groceries. I'm like, Mom, I'm in the middle of a football game. As my 10-year-old self, like, you just knocked over my quarterback. I'm so mad at you right now. So anyway, getting away from that. So that was my hope. When I saw the pitch here, the field here, I was like, God, I would have killed to have something like that when I was a kid. So story time aside, as you get down into the lower bowl, the seats are all the same. There are no glass pieces or anything like that because you are down in the lower bowl. But what you have is you have the 1x3, yes, not 1x4, 1x3 modified plate/tile. And on here it says realmadrid.com. It is white backed and the sticker printing is in blue. So you have that the whole way around the bowl at the bottom because, that's important for people to know where to watch or where to go check out their favorite football team, even though they're already at the stadium and they already know. I always find that kind of stuff fascinating to me. It's just bizarre. So that kind of sums up what you're seeing inside the stadium. The only other thing that is on the opposing side from the scoreboard and the entrance, not entrench. They're entrenched in the entrance. Say that 5 times fast. See if you don't spit out your tongue. Anyway, it says Real Madrid CF, like we had talked about with the print earlier. These are stickers, however, and they're broken up. So you have the RE together, the AL together, M, and then the AD, RI, D by itself, and then the CF is together. Those are on bricks that are on the inside. They're obviously on the bottom. So that is kind of neat. I do like the way that looks. But yeah, I'm really impressed by the way everything kind of came together. It really looks really, really sharp. Now, let's talk on some of the building techniques here. And one of the building techniques that I found fascinating that I already mentioned was in the corners. And what you have to get is you have to get a rounded shape. Lego does not do round very well. For this size model, it's a lot easier because you're talking almost 6,000 pieces to be able to accomplish something like that. So Milan and his team did a fantastical job. So here is what they did to accomplish that. So to first start out, like I had mentioned, you build this thing in quarters and everything is pretty much the same as far as build techniques, or not build techniques, build idea and the way that things are accomplished. Everything is kind of done the same way. So where you have the 4 giant pillars that are out front of each corner, those are attached into a turntable base, actually. So that's kind of cool in its own right, and the way that it connects and locks into place so that it is not able to be maneuvered or knocked off. You don't have to worry about any of that. It's kind of one of those things where it really protects the safety of the corners of the set. I know that sounds really dumb, but if you've ever built a set like this and you have like a corner of something that pops off easily, you get super duper frustrated. You're like, seriously again, here we go. Anyway, so to be able to get that central facing piece, what was done here is you're building up a few different pieces and then you clip this segment in and then rotate it down and towards the exterior of the build, which I thought was really kind of interesting. And then there are also some clips here because the clips become super duper important when you get to another part. So you have 2 clips on this assembly above, which help clip in something else, but there are 2 clips that are adjacent to this main central build. They are not actually attached. They are attached to the base of the build of each segment. And what is interesting is those are essentially just stopper pieces. That's all they're doing. They are allowing the sections that are angled, and they are angled via plates and bricks that have the angle ability in them. And when I say angle ability, I'm struggling for the word here right now, but they are able to be maneuvered. You can open and close them, right? Think of like if you take your thumb and your fingers and you open it like a shark's mouth, like you're making a puppet character on the wall through light. Okay, that's essentially what is going on here. So that gives you the freedom to be able to maneuver these sections around, but then also have the ability to lock them. Lock is not the right word, but allow the maneuverability to be decreased, because even after you're done, this entire section, this entire segment, because there are 2 pieces on each side that are clipped in there by a joint, you can still, even after you're done, and I'm doing it right now, you can still maneuver this thing around just to change the angle ever so slightly. Okay, so you start all of this at the base, which is a really great way of doing it. And then obviously, as you increase in height, all you're doing is really stacking things on top. And you get to those plates that have the, you know what, I'm just going to call it a turntable in between. It's not a turntable, but it allows you the opportunity to be able to maneuver those pieces around that are then eventually clipped into place solidly. It's just a really great way of accomplishing that. And I really like the way that was done. It gave me an inspiration to a certain degree. I'm like, you could accomplish so many different, not so many different angles, but rounded angles really become much easier to accomplish at that point in time. But again, you can't do this with something that only has 1,000 pieces. I mean, you could, but then the rest of your build would look naked. You would spend so many pieces doing that here that it would be almost impossible to use. So I really like the way that was done. Even the fact that it is still, like I said, able to be maneuvered afterwards is fine by me. I don't have any issues with it whatsoever. I think it's fine. Some people are going to say, that is stupid. I don't like the way that is done. Well, you're an idiot. No, I'm totally kidding. But, you know, it's different strokes for different folks. So as I did mention, this thing can come apart in quadrants and quarters and stuff like that. And it's actually coming apart on me right now. After you get this thing completely built, there are a few tiles and pieces that are used to be able to clip the segments together. I'm actually going to take one of them off here, and that is all that they do. They essentially just clip everything into place so that nothing is moving. Everything is solid. Everything is locked into place. And yeah, so the segments do come apart. They come apart in fourths. I can actually split it in half first, and then you can take the other pieces apart. I'm not going to take off all these all these tiles and such, because it is a pain in the butt. I do have, even though I have tiny little girl fingers, I still struggle with these and I still hate them. It drives me nuts. But so anyway, but the field is obviously completely different. And here's what you might be thinking. Oh, well, it's pinned together because obviously this thing has a Technic base, right? Not so much a Technic frame because it's pretty much all system. I think it's all system. But underneath, obviously, you have a Technic frame for rigidity. What I find interesting is the fact that instead of using pins to clip things into place, to lock things into place, you know, these segments when you push it together, instead what they did is they just use axles. So at least it lines up into the holes of the Technic brick, but it doesn't lock anything into place until you choose to, lock it into place and do it that way. So I like the way that is done. And the same thing with the pitch. The pitch has a Technic base as well. And it just has a few little axle type pieces. One is a pin side and the other is the axle bar side. And it just allows everything to line up just perfectly and you don't have any issues. That was a lot. That was way more than I expected. And I tried. I hope I got pretty much everything that you guys are looking for out of this. I'm gonna say it right now. I know some of you are gonna crucify me for this. Some of these sets, the stadium sets, I'm not the biggest fan of. I'm not a big follower of the sport or the team, so that stuff doesn't really work for me. But I am super impressed with the way this turned out. The color palette and the texture ideas to it are probably my favorite things, even more so than like the Man U Stadium, which was 2 years ago now. Definitely wasn't on my to-do list at that point in time. Really cool building techniques that are here, especially like I had mentioned on the corners, to be able to accomplish the roof, to the seating segments, all of that kind of stuff really, really worked really well and it was a lot of fun. The sticker stuff is kind of crappy because you've got some really long stickers that you have to put on here, but it is nice to be able to also get some printed pieces like the stadium name and the logo on the outside, and then also the giant tile pieces for the roofing section that allows to be attached as well. So as a whole, I like the way this is done. I think it is something that is, if you're not a soccer fan or a football fan, if you're not a fan of that, this may not be for you. I'll be straight up. It may not be for you. It makes for a really cool display piece. And I actually got done talking to my wife the other day about this, and I was like, after I had built it, and I was like, I can't keep this together right now in its current state because it's way too large. It takes up way too much of my working space. But I want to have this on display in the future because it is different. And like I said, it does look like a more modernized stadium that I'm used to here in the United States. I like it. I like it. It probably isn't going to make my top 10 of the year, but it is definitely something that I have grown to appreciate and respect for some of the ideas behind how this type of set is scaled and accomplished as far as techniques and build process goes. I really like that. Plus, obviously, if you're a giant fan of Real Madrid, you're going to love the instruction manuals because it gives you the history of the stadium. It gives you all these little fun tidbits as you build it. It's just a lot of fun. So I'm going to have to give this thing an 8. There are some things as far as gaps in between the corner sections, which I'm not a giant fan of. But again, how are you going to accomplish that and make it better? There's really no way to do so without making things extremely difficult. The corners on the exterior, again, there's nothing. It's not like you can see a red plate or anything like that. The color palette is there to cover anything that might be there. But it does allow you to see some naked space, but as a whole, it turned out well. So for that, I'm going to say an 8 out of 10. Milan and his team did a fantastic job, and I'm super impressed with the way this looks. I look forward to seeing other sets like this in the future, these other models. I said not to really call it a set, but I'm looking forward to the other models that are similar to this. And like I told you in the breaking news segment, I would love to see some of the more modernized stadiums in the NFL done, baseball, and then also like World Cup stadiums. Like Qatar is coming up later this year where the World Cup is being played, the Men's World Cup. I would love to see something like that. I think it would be super duper neat. But you're talking about a history of, soccer, Brazil, and Argentina. There's so many countries that have these lavish stadiums for their main franchises to play in their world teams. I know this isn't a world team, but it's one of those things that could be done. It could really be really cool. Now, if you're a collector of this stuff, yeah, add it to your collection. So with that in mind, I'm going to wrap this thing up. I had a lot of fun. I hope you did too. And if you didn't, hopefully you learned something. Hopefully it piqued your interest at some point in time. So until we meet again for another lovely rundown of a set or multiple sets or model, I'm your minifig host, Matt. Let's build on it.